10% have 90% access. The 90% have only 10%, which is information asymmetry. Eligibility usually works with a theorem like a probability theorem, if and or conditions. Information is a huge gap, and people need access to this information in their local languages to first identify what are the government programs. Our country loves acronyms, so we also came up with one in the hope it'll get adopted. Can any citizen become a Haqdarshak?
Hi, welcome to the Exchange podcast. Here we are going to tell stories of system orchestrators and their journey on exponential change. Today we have with us Priya, who's the chief evangelist at C4EC, or the Center for Exponential Change. And along with Priya, we have Aniket Doegar, who is the co-founder of Haqdarshak, an organization based out of Pune. Correct? I will let Aniket introduce himself a little deeper. Aniket, over to you.
Thanks, Sid. So, hi, I'm Aniket. I'm the co-founder of Haqdarshak. We are working on getting citizens access to social security and government schemes in the country. Citizens, small businesses, farmers. 80% of the country is eligible for different kinds of government programs. I am originally from Shimla, born and brought up there, did my schooling there, and then did my commerce and economics degree from Shriram College of Commerce, but had no interest in commerce, a deep interest in economics and policy.
Right.
And that's how I kind of got pushed into taking up Teach for India right after college back in 2010. Taught grade 2 students over 2 years, about 110 students, and then worked in rural Maharashtra, rural Rajasthan, doing different gigs, trying to build my resume actually to go to Harvard. But yeah, here I am 10 years later at Haqdarshak.
We'll start with this whole big problem that you're trying to solve. You mentioned how it's already unfair that low-income families are way behind, and with information asymmetry, they get further pushed back. And you see welfare as a way to bridge this gap, bridge this inequity. And so tell me, why do people need welfare? And what does not having access to the right welfare does?
So I'll break it into 3 aspects. One is the macro, which is our country.
Right.
So I think out of the 1.4 billion people, about less than 10%, about 130 million people is the consuming power of India, which has 57% of the wealth, which actually the remaining 90% is dependent or eligible for different kind of government programs. We are constitutionally a socialist country, which is supposed to work for the last mile. So the 10% have 90% access. The 90% have only 10%, which is information asymmetry, access to resources, access to information. So that's where we start. And I'll come to my own status quo. Belong to that 10%. I am privileged, both in terms of economic status, where I was born, my gender, where I grew up, so very lucky. But I think I also saw a deep inequality growing up. So my mother comes from a family where they all were teachers, she and her sisters. My grandfather was a lawyer working with the government. On my father's side, my grandfather never finished school. My father didn't complete college and has a business. So I saw these two varied sides. So there was this sense of around me, like seeing this, a lot of privilege, but at the same time seeing in the work and on a daily basis that people who do not have access to information. So I think that idea got seeded very early on. But then I think during Teach for India, which I actually only joined, like I said, to experiment, to also learn. It also was a very intriguing aspect coming from the commerce background to see work on the ground. But it was in my end of year 1 when I managed to get a few students into a scholarship school of Akanksha. And then I started searching over that summer that what are the other scholarships that are there, because somebody told me government has all these scholarships. And this is back in 2010-11. I have a functioning laptop. I have a wired internet cable access. So I have all the access, and I could not find information on government schemes. And that bothered me. And I think that's where the problem kind of started affecting me even more. And it continued over the next few years. And I think I always believe that if you want to build something meaningful, and meaningful doesn't necessarily have to be at scale, but if you have to build something meaningful, you have to be obsessed with the problem. And those early first 4-5 years of formally starting Haqdarshak, I feel I gradually got obsessed with this problem and this annoyance on why I couldn't find this information. And this was the first part of the problem that we identified, that information is a huge gap and people need access to this information in their local languages to first identify what are the government programs. So in about 2014-15, along with a senior from my college, we got started in building a Wikipedia kind of platform. That and we had naively thought that we'll build this platform and people will come on this, right? And then gradually the second part of the problem started coming to the surface, that information is one part. The second part is access to the last mile. How do you get people to these technology platforms where back in 14-15 there was no 5G, 4G, no Geo, no smartphones, very little access. So I think that was the two-part problem that we started looking at. And overall, I think with a country like India, where you have the rich are getting richer and faster, and there is this huge middle to low middle income, I would say, hole that is never ending for people. People are one medical disaster away from getting back into deep poverty. Social welfare becomes very important. It is not just what is sometimes termed as a freebie. It's a way to keep an economy stable, society stable. And that's where I saw that there is this huge gap to be solved.
So tell us, what does Haqdarshak mean? And how did this idea evolve? You've talked about it a little bit, but how did the idea evolve once you got this, that information is one part, but also access in a way that somebody can come and assist you is another part. So talk to us about this evolution of the idea as well as evolution of you as a leader. What are things that went into your head as you started building this organization?
So Haqdarshak, Haq in Urdu means your rights. Darshak in Sanskrit means the person or individual which shows you the path. So it came together. My other co-founder, Priya Ganapati Guns, as we call him, had actually coined this term as part of another fellowship. And we got together in 2015, me, Guns and Mayank, to set up Haqdarshak. We are actually a result of another government scheme, two government schemes, Startup India and Digital India. Because for the longest time, I was trying to find people or organizations where I could either incubate the idea or try as hard as possible not to start up. Because my dream and my mother's dream at least was that I at least do a master's. So I was kind of trying to do that. But along the way, I just couldn't find any takers. Because the standard response you got about 10 years back was either it's government's job. Why are you doing this? What does technology have to do with this? Are you from a political party? What is your vested interest? Why do you want to work on schemes? And to articulate or explain to people that this can be solved through technology with scale, by democratization of information, and it can have a business model. Because in 2015, we applied to the Startup India and Digital India program at IIM Ahmedabad, which was supported by Intel and TCS. Then we applied to an IT Delhi program, NASCOM program. Initially, luckily won all the competitions, got some free grant money, and more importantly, confidence to say that the business model has merits. And that's how kind of Haqdarshak got started. We registered in Jan 2016.
So tell us more about your own journey as a leader, from taking the idea from 0 to 1 and then 1 to 10.
Early on, the learning in 0 to 1, you have this superhero syndrome, right? Where you want to do everything. You want to be, as I like to say, be on the dance floor, right? You don't want to be on the balcony watching the chaos. You want to be part of the chaos. The first phase of 0 to 1 was all about roll up your sleeves and we will solve for everything. Then realization hits that along the way, you need people, right? You are not going to be able to solve everything. And I think my then journey from 1 to 10 became in terms of building a team, getting way smarter people than me. And I would like to believe that my team is more qualified, In fact, I tell them all the time that if I were to apply at Haqdarshak now, I wouldn't get a job because my qualifications just don't match up. But I think that was the second part of the realization, that you need to be okay to stand back. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs have this. There are two things that entrepreneurs have a lot in. Three things I would say. One, they are very stubborn, which is required. They have a lot of ego,
Right.
which comes in along the way. And then I think they also are perfectionists. So I think that was a change that I had to make from that 1 to 10, that a lot of times I felt I could do this better. But then I would be okay to say, let it be.
No, so you spoke of, and which was fairly interesting. One was the personality of a leader, which is where you spoke of ego, you spoke of being a perfectionist. And how long does it take for someone between the 0 to 1 and 1 to 10 to come to the realization, or let's say in the C4EC language, reimagine themselves as a leader and say, maybe not, and kind of shift and become somebody else, right? Which is what you did eventually.
For me, it took about 3 to 4 years because I also was 25 when I started. I've seen entrepreneurs who are way more experienced before starting up, and I think their realization is much faster because either they've been in such teams or they've done that before. For me, it was all new. I never actually worked in a corporate or a full organization. I'd always worked in either fellowships or startups. So for me, it took 3 to 4 years.
Right.
And I think it only comes by experience. So, and it comes with failure. So when you realize you can't be in 20 places in one go, when you realize when you're in the field, in the heat, and you realize, what am I doing here? Right? Like, why am I here?
Correct.
And then you need more people who can be as crazy as you. Then the time goes in convincing them to say, no, this is not crazy. Join me. Kind of,
Right.
So yeah, and I think that comes, and then very clear, I would say, realization of what you want to achieve. From day one, I think me and my founding team were clear. We want to achieve scale. We want to look at this problem not as a pilot, but really look at the numbers, because and scale is subject. Let me say this, right? Like, I have been a teacher, and I feel like teaching 100 students has been a great achievement because they can go to college. There is no other better way to end generational poverty. At the same time, in social security, it's all about volumes, because you have 1 billion plus people on Aadhaar. We are talking about 800 million people on PDS, ration system. We have 500 million people on Ayushman Bharat. So for scale for us was important. And that was the other realization, that if I continue running the organization like this, in 10 years time, we'll still be doing pilots.
Right.
And that is not something I want to be.
Correct.
And it also, would like to add, comes from going back to the earlier part of my privilege. Because I could at any point, to be honest, stop and say, I want to go back. I want to shut this. Not everybody has that privilege. Economic security or backing from your family to say, experiment and try. A lot of people have their financial needs to be covered first. So I think there was that sense of, if I look back now, to say arrogance, say, I'll try. If I fail, it doesn't matter to me. But I think that's why it is very different for different entrepreneurs.
Correct.
And where they are in their journey.
And how did the organization move from starting with the first few assisted welfare delivery to where you are today?
So I think the first step for us, in fact, there was an individual TP Vincent, who was ex-Cognizant technology head. So he had actually made an app which was a vitamin deficiency matching app. And he was part of an incubator where we saw him, I met him. And then I realized, if you were to just replace the vitamin deficiency with schemes, so exactly we need a matching engine. So the first phase of Haqdarshak was to build a eligibility engine, because what we had identified as the first step was people do not know what they're eligible for.
Right.
Once we figured the technology, actually we realized there isn't in India a database of government service. So we went about painstakingly going department to department, state by state. And we were very lucky that Venkat, who was back then the head of Tata Trust under Mr. Ratan Katar, he himself backed us. He was that initial kind of experimental grant and money to say, go and build a database of schemes. So, because you have to understand that the problem in India is no one scheme. Schemes are not written in one schema.
Right.
It's not written in one format. each state on an average has 34 to 35 state departments. In a state like Bihar, a health department it has about 60 apps running, right? So eligibility usually works with a theorem like a probability theorem, if and or conditions. If you belong to a caste or income or geography, you will get access to schemes.
Right.
So how do you take it from different states, putting it together? So that took us from 2017 to 19, 2 years. But you were able to build a database of about 5,000 government schemes in 14 local languages. So that's how we started building a research base, a product and technology base. And the third aspect when we realized is that if you have built all these apps, people are not going to download this. If you were to build a B2C app, it would take millions of dollars of VC capital, and we couldn't be true to our mission. So we pivoted to say we need agents who can do this, who can go door to door, because our focus was rural India, low income India. And India has the largest network of women agents in the world. 100 million members in National Rural Livelihood Mission.
Wow.
Yes, and then they are divided into state rural livelihood missions. So like any social organization, whichever organization tells you anything about agents, they are piggybacking on SRCC or Asha workers or Anganwadi.
Right.
The other thing to note about agents, I at Haqdarshak say this very clearly that you've trained 45,000 women agents, but only 10% are active. And that 10% active is a reality in the sector as well, because 10% of the agent networks in our country do 90%. And that happened. So I think in those next couple of years in Haqdarshak, we focused on training women agents who took the app, went door to door, screened people, and then told them this is what you're eligible for, and then trained them how to apply for different government schemes. And the other thing about government schemes that we learned in the early years is that people value information a lot. The second biggest barrier to people is documents, your identity. Because the identity becomes the core of social security and what you're eligible for. What's the caste of your father? Where were you born? What's your income level? Is there any disease in the household? For all these questions, there are related documentations. If you have the right documentation at the right time, then your name will appear on the list. If you miss out on that documentation, then you're off the list, right? So the main core part that we identified is how do we get people the right documentation at the right time.
So what does this look like on the ground for, let's say, a farmer or a teacher or a health care worker? What does an assisted model of Haqdarshak look like?
So in the community, we would we'll train a women agents, and she then it gets trained on the agent app, which is in local languages. If I am the agent and you are a teacher or a farmer or a small business, I'll ask you a set of 20 to 30 questions. And each question's answer will prompt the next question, which is based on the eligibility theorem. Then I'll tell you you're eligible for these 25 government schemes. To get these schemes, these are the documents required. And then I'll go step by step in asking you, do you want to get... And then as a citizen, you're free to apply to your government citizen center, go to your political representative, go to the local district office, or take help from me as Haqdarshak, where I offer you doorstep delivery service. And then I help you fill the form, submit the form. A lot of these applications are offline even today because you have to either download the form from the website or create a separate account on the websites or go to a office and get that form filled physically and submit. So all those processes are done by the agent.
Fun.
All right. So what we have here is something that my colleague Shrikar came up with, which is a game called Pictionary. This is essentially largely now based on the words that are in parlance for Haqdarshak and for C4EC. So what we're going to do is pick one chip, draw, and the other people kind of on the table can guess what it is.
Yeah.
Right? So Priya, will you want to go first?
Okay.
Yeah. Here's a pen. And we have about 30 seconds to draw.
Community.
You're absolutely right. Community.
Nice. Aniket, do you want to go next?
Yeah, but I'm terrible at it. I'm saying,
Hurdles.
can I say something and you can edit it?
Yes. Yes.
What do they not have? Yes, I said like,
Oh, right. Okay.
10 years back, you were at this place of discomfort trying to figure out what will solve the problem. Today, you're at a different place of discomfort. And a couple of years back, when we first connected, you called this the 7-year itch of Haqdarshak. From outside in, what you're doing seems to work. You have reached about 6-7 million people. You have redefined what assisting people on their quest of welfare looks like. So, what is this new discomfort that you're at?
so I think I would like to say the first phase of Haqdarshak was that 16 to 19, just exploring whether we could even build technology around this, test waters. The second, and I think this has come in every organization, which is the COVID phase, right? Where it actually scaled a lot. A lot of our business models got set in terms of working with corporates. We worked with companies, getting their workers and gig workers, small businesses, access to government schemes. And we actually scaled. We went from impacting 100,000 families to about 5 million in 3 years, from 2020 to 2022, 23. And we had our mission statement saying every citizen should get access to social security. And then we brainstormed. And we said, one of the things we want to add in that statement is in our lifetime.
Hmm.
So that became the itch to begin with. Like because I met a lot of role model entrepreneurs in this space who have been mentors, role models. But I always felt that we are still, in a way, grappling different ways of the same problems, right? And of course, some fantastic work that has happened. One, I was very clear, I'm obsessed with the social security problem, right? How do you make social security a more universal, easily accessible, technology-driven part? But again, in a lifetime. So I worked backwards, looking at my lifestyle, I had about 25 years left. So I was in that working maybe 15 or 20. So how do you get there? And in fact, it was in one of the RMP step backs where I got a chance, 10 minutes on a boat ride to speak to Nandan. And he said that spend time with Sanjay. And you should you build something which works. But you need to think, how can it work in the way of the hardware, right? This is a very important aspect of our overall thinking. And that got me thinking. I met Sanjay, I met you, I met the team. And I think the whole part, how I came in, I think one of the things that I consciously did was that I'll unlearn everything. I will not come with preconceived notions, because once you have worked at something for that long, you are kind of you become rigid.
Right.
You only think this is the way to solve things. And I think the first 6 months went in just unlearning myself and believing this was possible. How do you exponentially change? And then scale? And the longer time actually took to convince the team, which was the most interesting part. So it was not a top-down kind of a diktat. Oh, we are not going to do this. It's like you mentioned, we started our journey 2022 November, December, 23 Jan. We are in 25 March. And I think only recently the entire team has come together and saying that, yes, we believe in this. And today, all of us talk one language, which is for me amazing to see that we don't have to. Now we are actually only talking about how do we exponentially change.
So, what is this new reimagination?
So I think the goal is that as Haqdarshak, we deliver 1 million to 1.5 million services, which is our average, on assets, because that keeps us glued to the ground. That keeps us, that's our actually, as you would call, like the difference in the ecosystem, that we ourselves, while building technology, while building research, while working with the ecosystem, we are rooted to the ground.
Right.
But earlier the thinking was we ourselves will do 100. Now we are saying, while we continue to experiment on the million every year, how do we train other people, work with networks, work with partners to then impact 100 million directly, and hopefully with the government and other champions also impact 1 billion, which is the need of the country, and as one of the goals to also see how this can be taken to other countries. So that's really the goal. And really, one of the other things, because of our work over the last decade on the ground, we really now believe in the voices from the ground approach. So a lot of bottoms up approach, and that's the other exponential change that we want to focus on and a differentiator. So there is the supply side policy framework of the government, which a lot of times is top down. Can we bring a nuanced approach of this bottoms up approach while thinking of scale and covering even the most vulnerable or excluded communities, right? So give you an example. We are currently working with the Ministry of Social Justice on a project with denotified tribes in Maharashtra. 25,000 families to get them access to Ayushman. When we went there, a lot of them don't even have Aadhaar. And the first thing I did was ask Sanjay, can you connect me to the Aadhaar DE? And I went to them in Delhi. And there was not a lot of acknowledgement to believe that there are people out there who still don't have Aadhaar.
Right.
And because that community is so small, because 25,000 if you think about India, is not even a drop in the ocean.
Right.
Right. So, but these are communities who are nowhere in terms of their caste, in terms of their geography, and there are many small such pockets. So how do you build for them as Haqdarshak? So we are ourselves focusing there and getting it executed on the ground with our teams, but then take the learnings, go back to the ministry and say, this is how we can scale. So that's been the change in approach, and that's how we are looking at now things and seeing that, how can these services reach absolute last mile and excluded communities.
In this quest, you have come with this new model that you call the DEAR model. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I think, again, as we went along the journey, this is something we co-created with you, Sanjay, and the team. And it was a very step-by-step process. So it's, our country loves acronyms. So we also came up with one in the hope it'll get adopted. But the DEAR framework essentially is, so discovery, eligibility, application, redressal. Eligibility is something we build. But what we found in our exploration journey in the first year is there is a step before E, which is discovery. Because let's take an example that all of us want a home loan here. So all of us know a home loan exists. That's discovery.
Right.
Then you will, even today on your smartphone, if you say home loan 3 times, you'll get a call from a bank. And then, right, like they will say, are you eligible?
Yeah.
Once you're eligible, you'll check your eligibility. You will get a bank manager or a relationship manager who will help you with the forms, fill it, which is application. And then through the process of 20 years of home loan, if you have any grievance, there is a redressal team.
Yeah.
That's for the top 10%. Now, when you look at it from a scheme perspective, like a pension scheme or a scholarship scheme, for the 80%, there is none of these processes and a step-by-step process exists. I do not know in the first place if a scholarship scheme exists.
Right.
That's discovery. Once you know, we build the eligibility engine and then so on the processes. So I think the first step was to actually interestingly go to step 0. What we thought of Haqdarshak as step 1 was actually, step 1 actually became step 2. So we spent a lot of time in building this discovery, and the interesting thing was as we got deeper into this discovery builds and we worked with FIDE, with Becken on this, we realized that discovery is universal. We could apply discovery of schemes or services to everything and anything. And that's what we are doing today with multiple networks. We are probably the organization which is present in the most number of networks right now in getting people, whether it's farmers, scholarships, with ONDC for MSMEs. So it's very interesting. And then post eligibility, this third step comes application. So application is what we do, like I said, 1 million on our own. But then how can we train the ecosystem, whether it's nonprofits, whether it is the government networks, whether it is the banking networks, postal networks, how can we build easy, comprehensive training modules and using now hopefully agentic AI. That's one of the things that we want to work on, making it easier for people and agents to not only solve for their communities, but earn a meaningful livelihood. And the fourth comes redress. Because in our country, there is a lot of political push now to get people onboarded on government schemes. In fact, we are seeing all elections are being won on promises and transfers. So there is this machinery in the state and center which works on onboarding people. So you have 50 crore people on Ayushman, 30 crore on Ishram, you have 10 crore NPS, right? But once you're on the pension system or once you have got Ayushman, there is no service today which a person in a rural village or in a tier 4, tier 5 town, a low income family at the time of need doesn't know which hospital to go. So how do you discover when you're on the system? So we're trying to build that as well, which is in very early stage. And that's a framework we're trying to cover.
When we talked about this, we said this is one change that Haqdarshak will do, and that will create more and rapid changes. What are these domino of changes that you foresee by enabling discovery at scale?
I think one, we started thinking of ourselves more like a horizontal, which is first of all an internal mindset change. That we are not a services organization alone. We are actually a horizontal where discovery can be given to everyone in the network. So it could be a health organization, education organization, livelihoods organization, government department, where we can enable discovery at scale or eligibility at scale. So I think that's been a big shift and change in our thinking. And I think the second is looking at the different organizations or partnerships more as collaboration. Rather than competing with them or looking at competition. Now we are looking with the mindset that can we collaborate with everyone, where we don't need to scale the solution and still kind of grow very sustainably.
Other interesting phrase that we came up with is from Haqdarshak to Haqdarshan. Tell us more about that.
So that comes under the application, the A part. Again, something we work with you and Sanjay and our team. And it was very interesting and kind of, I remember in the office like a eureka moment.
Yes, very catchy.
Very catchy. And that, while Haqdarshak does its own work, how do you get more people to see social security in the same way? Right. How do you train networks? How do you train people? Like, can any citizen become a Haqdarshak? Can you become a Haqdarshak for your domestic worker? Can anyone who has a factory worker, a driver, a domestic worker, a person in their community, can you become a Haqdarshak for them to tell them about government schemes? Can we make the systems that easy? Yeah. Right? So that's where the thinking is coming from. So it's just not about training. It's also about the mindset again, that every citizen can become a Haqdarshak for someone else who requires, because if we can mobilize that 10% for the 90, that's the only way we are going to reach that.
A few years back, you had said that sending 100 students to school was your biggest achievement. With this new exponential thinking, what are these stories of hope and possibilities? If I met Aniket 10 years from now and I asked him and he said, yes, this works at scale, what is this?
I think 10 years from now, or what scale looks like would be, what comes to my mind is like, people think of social security as how people think of payments today. So Haqdarshak is one of the many organizations. I think success would be that there are many organizations who are in the mainstream, sustainable, in certain cases, commercial way, looking at social security in this country. So the North Star for me would be to go back and for every citizen, accessing schemes is so easy. There is this robust, secure, working, efficient system at the back end of multiple network organizations who are making social security easy, comprehensive, a lifetime journey for this family, for these families.
When you first encountered this challenge, what kind of emotions did it feature? Because I heard from where you started off in Shimla and then eventually went down your journey. So what was the first thing that you felt why you needed to be on this journey? What was the one thing?
I think helplessness. Having access, having privilege and helplessness, then that kind of consciousness to say that I don't have the lived experience.
Right.
So I am not faced this.
Right.
So I am feeling empathy for someone. It was deep empathy. It's a feeling of helplessness as well. But then channelizing it, and also I think realizing in that even pre-zero journey of 4-5 years, where I mentioned I was in rural Rajasthan and Maharashtra and all parts of the country, to try and see, or what I like to call borrowed lived experience.
Right.
To go, whether it was my students, whether it was their families, whether it's in rural Rajasthan or Maharashtra or Delhi. So that was the feeling. And I think those two kind of powered through. in those years.
In experiencing discomfort, what are the unmet opportunities and values did you kind of recognize through that?
Integrity is kind of the most important to me personally, and that kind of I try to build in the organization, because, and I'd say that's particularly in the work we do. The people have been so tired of the system and breaking their trusts. When I went to the ground and saw, people were kind of agnostic. I mean, not really, they didn't bother. You've come there, you're telling us about schemes, there is no trust that you'll follow through. So what became absolutely important for us is to have the integrity as a core value, to build people's trust and to follow through, whatever it takes. We have done projects where, or services where we've done it in losses. We have put 50 people where probably we had budgets to do 5 because we wanted to see through the project.
Right.
And only because we want to rebuild the trust for people on the ground, in social security. So I think that was one core value to be in the organization.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to have any reflection from all the conversations?
Yeah, I think for me, I have been working with Aniket for the last 1.5 years. And for me, it's been a very interesting co-traveling journey. I have learned a lot about welfare, how it works, what are things which are breaking, what are things which are not working. For me, this big pivot of Haqdarshak has been this Haqdarshak to Haqdarshan. And for those of our listeners who don't understand Hindi, it is somebody who shows you pathway to anybody can show you a path. And for me, that has been one of the biggest pivot in the way the organization is thinking about growing, in the way you're thinking about different types of solutions, in the way you're thinking about how technology should work. That for me has been the biggest change. And it's been a fascinating journey for me to learn more about it, to co-travel, to reimagine. It's like a whiteboard that we have been filling with new ideas, new rainbows, new unicorns, and I'm really looking forward to see how this goes.
Amazing. For me, I think just speaking to Aniket, I realized that it's so important to stay fluid and be open to looking at journeys and zooming out and looking at the big picture constantly, because that's the only way you can kind of continuously evolve and be whoever you want to be. And that's something that's truly commendable as a leader, and that's something that's very inspiring as well. Thank you.
Thank you.